I've spent a long time in my life dealing with wickedly smart people. When I say smart, I mean the cream of the crop academically, the ones who ace every IQ test. A whole lot of them ended up on Wall Street or in university economics departments. And you know what? More than half of them turned out to be complete fools in the real world of investing. It wasn't because they weren't smart enough. The contrary, they were too smart. So smart they believed they could explain the entire world with a single set of formulas. The root of all this is a disease I call physics envy. You see, the physicists were just too damn successful. Newton, Einstein, they described the fundamental laws of the universe with a few simple formulas, elegant as poetry. Fall. How beautiful is that? It's certain, precise, and universally true. And so everyone in every other field got a bad case of jealousy. They looked at the physicists and thought to themselves, I want that. I want my own fa equals ma. This envy is especially toxic in the field of economics. That these economists, they look at the messy, dirty, chaotic market full of sweat and tears, and it makes them deeply uncomfortable. They don't like the mess. They want order, elegance, and pretty models that you can put in a textbook and derive on a blackboard. So they invented a concept that, in my view, is one of the most idiotic ideas in the history of human thought, rational man. They assumed that every person in the market is a robot with a supercomputer in his pocket. This robot has instant access to all information and can, in a tenth of a second, calculate the most advantageous course of action. He has no emotions, no biases, no lingering bad mood from an argument with his wife last night, no stupid jealousy because his neighbor just showed off a new car. He is a perfect, cold, rational decision maker. This is utter nonsense. You only have to live in the real world for 5 minutes to know that human beings are nothing like that. We are impulsive, emotional, bias-ridden creatures. 90% of our decisions are based on subconscious urges. We don't even understand ourselves. We buy a stock, not because we've meticulously calculated its intrinsic value, but because we have a fear of missing out, or because we greedily saw it jump 10% yesterday. We sell a stock not because the fundamentals have deteriorated, but because we're scared witless by market panic. The greed and fear, those two words, explain the market's ups and downs better than all the Greek letters in your textbooks. But the academics suffering from physics envy refuse to admit this. They've spent decades arming their non-existent rational man model with ever more complex mathematics. They invented the efficient market hypothesis, telling you that market prices are always correct and reflect all known information. They came up with a capital asset pricing model, using a bunch of beta and alpha mumbo-jumbo to try and tell you the precise relationship between risk and return. These theories sound wonderful at academic conferences. They can get you tenure. But in the real market, they're like trying to navigate a hurricane that changes course daily, using a beautifully drawn map. The believers in these models, back in 1998, nearly bankrupted a hedge fund called long-term capital management and almost took the entire global financial system down with it, using their scientific methods. And that place was packed with Nobel laureates, the smartest brains in the world. Their models told them that a series of multi-standard deviation events was so improbable as to be negligible. But the real world is just a long string of these impossible events happening one after another. So, I gave up on that stuff a long time ago. Let me tell you, the right way to understand the market isn't to go to a physics lab. It's to go to a biological rainforest. Forget the precise, regular, predictable clock. The market is not a clock. The market is a wild ecosystem, a complex, adaptive, tropical rainforest. Think about what's in a rainforest. You have giant canopy trees. Those are the stable blue chip companies that get the best sun and soil. You have the vines clinging to them, the smaller businesses that depend on the giants to survive. You have ferocious predators, like the vulture funds that launch hostile takeovers. You have diligent decomposers, the bankruptcy firms that recycle resources. You have camouflaged hunters and weak creatures that survive through mimicry. In this ecosystem, nothing is permanent. The dinosaur that ruled yesterday could be wiped out by a small asteroid today. The climate changes. Rivers alter their course. New species emerge, and old ones are driven to extinction. Everything is in a constant state of flux and competition. The market is exactly that kind of place. Every participant, every company, investor, government, and consumer is a species in this ecosystem. They interact and influence one another. One company's innovation can destroy the foundation of another industry, just as the arrival of a new, more efficient predator can cause the existing food chain to collapse. A single stupid government regulation can be like a sudden drought, causing vast fields of corporate organisms to wither and die. The system is full of feedback loops. The stock goes up. It attracts more buyers, which pushes the price even higher. That's a positive feedback loop. But when it gets high enough, others will think it's too expensive and start selling. That's a negative feedback loop. These loops are all tangled together, making the system's behavior incredibly complex and utterly impossible to predict with simple, linear cause and effect thinking. They're trying to predict what this ecosystem will do tomorrow with a formula. That's even more absurd than trying to predict which tree in the Amazon will be struck by lightning next year and which monkey will be eaten by a snake. So when I see a young analyst walk in with a report full of complex calculations, telling me he's precisely forecasted a company's earnings per share for the next 5 years down to the second decimal place, I just have to laugh. The kid is still living in a physics fantasy. He thinks he's holding a telescope that can predict planetary orbits. He doesn't realize he's looking through a kaleidoscope, where the pattern changes with every tiny shake. This ecosystem, psychology plays a role that's 10,000 times more important than physics. Why do bubbles happen? Because humans have a herd instinct. You see everyone else making money. You feel an immense pain of being left out, a pain far stronger than the pain of losing money. And so you rush in, no matter how ridiculous the price. That isn't rational calculation. That's a primitive tribal instinct. Why do crashes happen? Because fear is contagious. When you see everyone around you frantically selling, your first instinct isn't to analyze the fundamentals. It's to run with the herd. Your amygdala gets hijacked, and your capacity for rational thought shuts down. This is a survival mechanism encoded in our genes over millions of years of evolution. On the ancient savannah, when your buddy saw a lion and started sprinting, the optimal strategy wasn't to stop and verify if it was indeed a lion. The optimal strategy was to run too. The ancestors who liked to analyze first didn't get to pass on their genes. The market is just the ancient savannah, magnified 1,000,000 times over. And the lions are the bad news and price collapses that will eat your capital. I know some very successful investors. Many of them never even went to business school, but they are all masters of human nature. They spend their time reading history to see how past bubbles formed and burst. They read psychology to understand the systematic errors the human brain makes under pressure and temptation. They even read biology to grasp the nature of competition and cooperation from an evolutionary perspective. They spend their time trying to understand the things that haven't changed in thousands of years. Human nature. They're not chasing fashionable but fragile mathematical models. When I was young, I was also fascinated by those theories full of Greek letters. They looked so scientific, so convincing. But I later discovered that they shatter at the first contact with the dog-eat-dog reality of the real world. I've personally seen many people who worship their models end up losing everything. They were hypnotized by the precision of their own creations, forgetting the fragile and unrealistic assumptions they were built on. So here's my advice. Throw away your finance textbooks, or at least put them on the bottom shelf. Then go read some books that will actually make you wise. Go read Darwin. You'll learn that it is not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent, but the one most adaptable to change. A single sentence holds more insight for business than 100 management books. A company's long-term survival depends entirely on its ability to find its niche and constantly evolve within a changing business ecosystem. Go read books on human psychological biases, like the works of Daniel Kahneman. You need to memorize those cognitive biases, like you memorize your multiplication tables, overconfidence, anchoring, loss aversion, confirmation bias. Then, you need to take that list and check yourself against it every single day to see which mental trap you've fallen into. Realizing you're a fool is the first step to becoming wise. Go read history, especially financial history. Read about the South Sea bubble and tulip mania. You'll find that those centuries have passed and technology and fashion have changed. The script that drives market manias is almost identical. New technology, plus easy credit, plus timeless human greed, will always cook up a giant bubble. History doesn't repeat itself, but it sure does rhyme. The market, as an ecosystem, you can never fully predict. Rather than a clock you can disassemble and analyze, will change you in several important ways. First, you'll become more humble. You will admit how little you know. You'll stop trying to predict short-term market movements because you'll know it's a fool's errand, just like forecasting the weather. You'll focus your energy on finding the truly robust species, the great companies with powerful moats that can withstand any climate change. Second, you'll develop a fanatic devotion to margin of safety. If you know you can't be precise, you will leave an enormous room for error in every decision you make. You won't invest every penny you have. You won't use a lot of leverage. You'll only buy a company at a price far below your estimate of its intrinsic value. Because you know your estimate is probably wrong, and a beast you didn't expect could come charging out of the jungle at any moment. The margin of safety is the buffer between you and bankruptcy. Third, you'll become more patient. Evolution in an ecosystem is measured in years, even decades. A giant redwood doesn't grow in a day. When you buy a good company, it's like planting a superior seedling in your garden. Your job isn't to pull it up every day to see if it's grown. Your job is to water it, fertilize it, and then wait patiently. Wait for compound interest, the most powerful force in nature, to work its magic for you. At my age, I've seen too many smart people shattered by their own arrogance. They believed they had found the market's holy grail, a formula that would work once and for all. But they forgot that the market, their opponent, is alive. It learns. It adapts. The moment you think you've found a rule and start to exploit it, your own actions begin to change that very rule. That's the fascinating and dangerous thing about an ecosystem. So, stop being jealous of the physicists. Their work is great, but their world is a simple one. Atoms don't think. Planets don't have emotions. Our world, however, is made up of billions of minds, all filled with hopes, dreams, greed, and fear. The complexity of this world is far beyond what any physics formula could ever describe. Embrace this complexity. Acknowledge the uncertainty. Then, using a multidisciplinary, more fundamental wisdom, become a cautious observer and a patient hunter. Forget the elegant clockwork models and step into that messy, humid, but endlessly vital rainforest. You will find that while you can never fully control it, as long as you respect its rules and remain humble and rational, you can find your own way to survive and thrive within it. That's more useful than any Nobel Prize-winning economic model. Trust me, it's what I've done my whole life. And it's worked out tolerably well for me.